Hello, everyone. Welcome to Manna Bites Film, an installment on Man Bites Media, and where we look at films from a religious, philosophical, and even maybe political angle to be able to dig deeper into film and its existential meanings in our lives. Today, I'm going to talk about the film Solo, a Star Wars Story. And fair warning, right up ahead, this is going to be very spoiler heavy, so if you have not seen this movie, this is your warning now. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. We're good? All right, let us begin. When I first saw Star Wars, a Solo Story, I was one of those ones of the fans that did not like it. I did not like it because I didn't like certain choices made in the film. I didn't like how Han received his last name, how Han received his iconic blaster. I didn't like also that Han is responsible for wrecking the Falcon to begin with, to make it the hunk of junk that we all know and love. That really upset me. I also didn't like a lot of the demystification of Han Solo, like when he says about the Kessel Run that he made it in 12 parsecs because he rounded down. That just irked me. I was very irked by the film. I didn't like a lot of the choices, and I didn't like also like how some of the characters where we were just beginning to love them died. And so I kind of left the film going, it was entertaining, but is this film necessary? Certainly not. But then I've been thinking to myself, I, as a person who loves to dabble in apologetics, thought, I always do this with a lot of Star Wars films, so why not Solo, a Star Wars Story? Give it a refreshing angle, a different take. So try to explore what is the deeper thing that this film is trying to portray to everyone. And so it is my hope that by listening to this, you will be able to watch this movie with new eyes and new appreciation. So let us begin on Solo, a Star Wars Story, a deeper look. First of all, let's talk about the genres that's going on in this film. You have two major ones. Well, one we already know, it's a space western, just like the classic Star Wars original trilogy style. It's a space western. And with that, it's going to be falling into that category of exploring different worlds and everything. And ultimately, as it says, as according to Wikipedia, the space western or space frontier is a subgenre of science fiction, which uses the themes and tropes of westerns within science fiction stories. And one of the things that subtle influences may include exploration of new, lawless frontiers. Well, that is exactly the world in which you're dropped into Solo, a Star Wars Story. Already it says in its beginning part of its crawl, which it doesn't really have the classic crawl from the Star Wars movies as much as it just has like these lines of text to start us out, it tells us it's a lawless time. But amongst this time, there are those, like Han, who yearn to fly among the stars, to be free. Liberation is a major key in this story. Well, we're going with all the Western things, and Westerns were very much known for freedom ideas of the riding out west and the expansion of the frontier and making a claim for yourself, et cetera, et cetera. Along with Western, in the Western genre, a lot of times your major characters are outlaws, and you would see things like train heists, gambling, and the good old classic shootout thing where basically you have one cowboy and another cowboy and they stare at each other and they're going to shoot it out. Well, this whole story, Solo, Star Wars Story, has all of that, but it's also blended with another genre, film noir, and it's very key to know that because film noir takes more of a pessimistic worldview. One of the things when it comes to Western film noir is an idea, especially when it comes to industrialization, of feeling existentially existentially entrapped. And that's the feeling of all the characters you get to basically meet in the story. Han and Kira, your two main characters in the beginning, are trying to flee their situation, their life in Corellia. They have been enslaved to a crime organization, and they're wanting freedom off of the planet of Corellia to start a new life for themselves. And Han is able to get away, but not Kira. the scene when it actually takes place, it's very reminiscent of those old classic film noirs where you see someone on the train and the person's waving bye-bye at them and all, and then all of a sudden maybe like the cops or the Nazis from some of the World War II epic films would come and capture them, but the person gets away free as they're crying out like, no, no. Well, that's what happens. So you have Han with this film noir genre aspect. There's a lot of dark shadows used. Lighting is very important. A lot of light coming through Venetian blinds or Venetian blind-like structures that is sprinkled throughout the film. You also, later on, Kira becomes, from her circumstances, gets to be eventually sold into slavery with a new group of Crimson Dawn. Now she's working with this crime organization, has been raised up to the rank of a lieutenant, and she is what's known in the film noir genre as the femme fatale. Now you may be asking yourself, what is the femme fatale? Well, that is essentially a mysterious or seductive woman who, has this element of danger to her. She's not to be trusted. She's mysterious. You don't know what to get about her, fully to trust her. And that tends to be Kira's character. Other characters, as far as outlaws you get to meet, is Beckett. You get to meet Val. You get to meet Rio. And Beckett becomes Han's mentor. Rio and Val are part of the original gang that tries to do a train heist to steal what is known as coaxium, which is hyperfuel to be able to, fuel ships to go into hyperspace. Well, amongst this gang, Val and Rio, sadly, though they long for a better life through this great big heist, it doesn't go well, and they both end up dead. Spoiler. At the same time, Beckett is, he loses out, and he's stricken with tragedy of losing Val, and is very ticked at Han for somewhat costing that aspect, because the only way in which he could save even Beckett was he had to lose the cargo, which Beckett was upset with. So basically you had two characters die, and they didn't even come away with the actual heist that they wanted to do. It was a failed heist. You're also introduced to the character of Enfys Nest and the Cloud Riders, who are all on these swoop bike things that flying around in the sky. Them, in the classic Western genre, would actually represent Native Americans, where at first will be normally seen as bad guys. You will later come to find out are actually natives of planets who are on the side of good. They're fighting for the rebellion. But you don't know that right away. You first are introduced to them as villains. The story goes on into where you get involved of more of the high society aspect of Dryden Voss, who is the crime lord in this main movie. He is also a jealous husband type, the way he is possessive of Kira, which is also another classic aspect of a film noir genre. And eventually, he sets them up with a new heist for them to go get unrefined coaxium through Kessel. And this is where the Kessel Run comes into play. Han also meets up with Lando in what's known as more like a saloon atmosphere. So you go from more of the classy casino of a film noir into the kind of dirty, grungy saloon of a Western. And again, they work to try and get the coaxium. They're able to successfully get it, but L3, who goes along with the journey, L3 is an interesting character. L3 is a droid who wants droid rights. She is constantly preaching this. She wants freedom for droids. And on Kessel, she actually gets it to where she starts a rebellion. One part where I was really enjoying her character. And then she sadly gets shot and destroyed. And what's also sad about this character is they have her consciousness uploaded into the Falcon because she's known for navigational system, which is kind of messed up that the very droid who's talking all about freedom and rights is now entrapped within the ship. Though the book goes on to say that L3 was okay with this because better to live in the ship and have some semblance of freedom than to be completely wiped out as a sentient droid, it's still not the greatest end for her. And that's what I keep saying here, is that you see one character yearning for freedom get shot. Two characters yearning for freedom die. Later on, when you finally have the clash between Han, Beckett, Kira, and Dryden Voss, well, Beckett betrays Han, but then they spring also a double cross on him. There's then even a triple cross where you think Kira is going to go against Han, but she actually ends up going against Dryden, which is a cool scene. And Dryden is killed. He doesn't get the money. Beckett, when it comes down to Han and him, well, Han ends up having to shoot his mentor, who taught him basically the main line, don't trust anyone. It is the best way to live. Well, just as we're seeing, Han took his advice, didn't trust him, and shot first. So everyone in the Star Wars community, yes, Han shot first. Clearly established. That can rectify all the complaints about what happens in A New Hope. But then Kira even then goes on to abandon Han because she's not truly free, because when the blinds come down, almost looking like a jail cell, you see that she is truly entrapped by Darth Maul, who is the real boss calling all the shots. That's the big spoiler cameo reveal. Darth Maul is in this film. But Han eventually is able to get off the planet that he's at. He's able to get the Falcon. He even gives all the fuel to Selflessness, which, as you say, as I already told you, is leading the rebellion, and shows Han's selflessness. And him and Chewie, who he meets by freeing him on a planet when he was once working for the Empire, but stopped because he's like, not about that life. Well, the two of them are able to finally fly off into the wild blue yonder of hyperspace to go on to their next adventure. But yet, as I'm saying, it seems like freedom, liberation, which is what this focus of the film is about, happens with Han and Chewie. Except where Han and Chewie is going is to Jabba the Hutt, because they mention about having a new up-and-coming gangster on Tatooine. And we all know, if anyone's seen the movies, that's Jabba. And so Han is going to then mess up the job he's given, a bounty is placed on his head, and he's going to be hunted until he can finally get that lifted off of him. So Han will eventually end up trapped. So for a film that's supposed to be that mentions themes of liberation, and yet have characters not really being liberated, seems very odd. But that's what we're going to get into, what is the true meaning of liberation. So I'm going to switch gears. Throughout the film, Han and Beckett contrast themselves on a major thing. Beckett teaches to Han about relying only on himself. Even when Beckett shows affection for Val, who he loses, still, Beckett is about himself. Han, on the other hand, seems to have, despite him trying to say he's an outlaw, despite him trying to be this grifter to where things don't go according to plan constantly, which is part of the humor, he is actually a man with a good heart. He is told by Kira, I know who you truly are. You're the good guy. Why is that? Because he helped Chewie get free, not for only his own selfish aspect of just getting out of the situation, but to help Chewie. For Chewie to then go on and do what he wants to do. Any time in which Han is placed in a situation where he could choose the selfish path, Han instead kind of has his conscience tell him, do the good thing. Help out Chewie. Help out these new friends he's found. Try and liberate Kira. And so Han, despite him trying to be the selfish guy, and has a wall, which he was greatly taught by his mentor Beckett, he actually does, when push comes to shove, act with selfless motivations. We will see this later in A New Hope when Han is in that major point. At first you think he's a guy who only cares about himself and self-survival, especially with the whole controversial who shot first thing with Greedo. But once Han has his treasure for saving Princess Leia, and Luke says to him, like, you know what's going on. We're going to do this big thing. You should stay and help. And Han's not about that. Well, Luke kind of tells him, like, yeah, you do what you're good at and everything. Take your treasure and run. Running away. But Han comes back, helps Luke, the rebellion wins. Han, when it comes to, like I said, when pushed, does the right thing and acts in a selfless nature. Selflessness is a major theme throughout Star Wars, and this is where true liberation comes from. Spiritually speaking, if you would check into Scripture, my knowledge is from the Bible, but also as well as other scriptural books like the Quran, and even in Judaism, in Buddhism, it is selflessness. It is the dying to self, the ego, that one finds true peace. This is why when someone is called as selfish, they tend to be someone who is full of themselves. Break that down. Full of self. Self with a capital S. That's where they're coming from, more of the greed, the corruption, the dark side angle. When you die to self, as taught by Christ in the Bible, die to self and live and therefore live truly, you're able to do that because as your ego dies, as your self dies, you're able to be selfless and therefore caring, compassionate, kind towards others. This is where true liberation lies. Han and Chewie achieve liberation through their friendship. It is a friendship built on selflessness, caring for one another. He could take Beckett's advice to keep his heart walled up, but instead, he allows himself to trust Chewie, to trust Chewbacca. And then eventually Han allows himself to trust Luke and Leia, and he gains more friends along the way. Eventually, Leia and him marry, and they're able to have a child. But as we know, in the new trilogy, things go wrong. Han runs away, but again, when push comes to shove, when he encounters Leia again, he is asked to confront his son, and he does. And though his end is met by the hands of his son, major spoiler for those who have not seen Force Awakens, though that happens, he does it out of selflessness. He is trying to show care, concern, compassion. As Scripture teaches, you shall know the truth, and it will set you free. This is where true liberation comes from. True liberation comes from when we allow the walls around our heart to come down to be able to care for others. This is why Han and Chewie are the only ones who can really say they achieve true liberation, because they have a bonding friendship. The late Peter Mayhew has said of Chewie and his character, is right according to an interview that was placed in Star Wars Insider. He says, "It wasn't about the war for Chewie. It was about his friend who rescued him from the Empire and to whom he owed a life debt. Chewie became Han's conscience and always wanted to do what was right. Selflessness, always wanting to do what's right. This is where we achieve true freedom. This is where true liberation happens. This is how the rebellion, by caring for others, by growing to build their group, to ultimately liberate the galaxy from the Empire, is able to establish freedom through love, compassion, and concern for others. This is a major teaching in Star Wars, and it is a major teaching in world religions. Dying to self that you may live." So, looking back, my hope, as you receive this, our daily bread, that You will then be able to look at Solo, a Star Wars story with new eyes. And you'll be able to see the Western influences as well as the film noir influences in the film. And then you're able to see how Han is able to achieve liberation through his care and concern for others. And how Chewie even is able to do that, Chewbacca, through care and concern for Han. And it is that friendship, which then grows on to bigger and better blessings, that true liberation, as I said, is achieved. This is the meaning of Solo, a Star Wars story. I hope you're able to see that, and I hope this gives you a sense of spiritual bread for your day, that you are able to live a better life by seeing such insights into film. Thank you. And this has been Manna Bites Media.